Well, good day, everybody. This is Chris with the Ancient Scholar. I hope this video finds you all doing well. So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about the new Pixel 8. This is going to be the Pixel 8 base model, 128 gigabyte base model, non-pro. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare it to the popular competition, the iPhone 15 non-pro model. So this is the base model, baseline model of the iPhone 15. So here I have both phones, and I figured I would go ahead and do a quick comparison since I've had several days to get used to the Pixel 8, and I'm coming from a Pixel 7, so I do have some familiarity with the contemporary Pixel line of phones. So I'm going to talk about this in kind of an 8-point process, starting with point number 1, the design. So both phones have their characteristic designs, and it really just comes down to aesthetics. The Pixel 8 is just a little larger. It is a little taller, a little larger than the iPhone 15, but both are fairly easy to use one-handed. Both have a pretty contemporary design that you see in a lot of phones. I would say that I have a preference for the Pixel. This bar camera design is a little more unique and a little more of a standout versus a more traditional slanted two-camera design that you see on the current iPhones. So I'd say that the current iPhone has a more basic standard design that's been around for a while, whereas the Pixel really does have more of a unique design. So that's just my opinion there. Number 2, talking about the screens. So both phones have pretty vivid, pretty beautiful screens. The Pixel, we'll talk about the Pixel. Pixel has a 6.2, I believe is 6.2 vertical inches, so it is a little smaller than last year's model, and it is a 2400 by 1080 AMOLED screen, so it is a 1080 display. It gets very bright. Actually, it is brighter, slightly brighter than what you get with the iPhone. It also has always-on display. That they've been doing this for quite a while, and I think that they really get the always-on right. Many of the Android offerings, the iPhone 15 does not have an always-on display. You have to buy the Pro model for that, because the iPhone 15 has a 6.1-inch AMOLED display with a resolution that is actually slightly higher than the Pixel 8 at 1179 by 2556, I believe. But you really have to pixel peep to see any major differences in resolution. But the main difference that I see is that the Pixel 8 has an adaptive refresh rate from 60 hertz to 120, not from 60 every step in between, but either 60 or 120. So this, at its base, offers a 120 hertz option, and then it can go down to a 60 hertz option. So it's not a full LTPO display that goes from 1 hertz to 120 hertz or 10 hertz to 120 hertz like some of the higher end flagship phones, but it still does have some variability in its refresh options, and of course it does offer that high 120 hertz refresh rate should you prefer that, whereas the iPhone is a non-variable, non-adaptive display, and it is just set at a straight 60 hertz refresh rate. Personally, I can't really tell a whole lot of difference between the 60 and 120 hertz. Some people can. I do find that the 120 hertz, when the Pixel 8 is in 120 hertz, when you're actively consuming content, it makes the Pixel feel maybe a little snappier, a little faster, a little more responsive than the iPhone 15. But that is just purely my personal experience. So I would I would probably give the edge to the Pixel's screen, even though it doesn't quite have the resolution of the iPhone 15. Just the fact that you get an always-on display, you get high refresh rate, and you get some variability. It can drop down to 60 hertz to save the battery a little bit more, and we'll talk about the battery a little later on. And it gets a little brighter. So it does get a little brighter than the iPhone 15. So I would definitely give the display or the screen to the Pixel 8. Talking about the cameras kind of interesting when comparing the camera on the Pixel to the iPhone. Both phones have a dual camera, and both phones are more or less doing the same thing, where you have a standard wide-angle lens. The Pixel 8 has a 50 megapixel standard lens or wide-angle lens, whereas the iPhone 15 has a 48 megapixel. But the big thing is the Pixel bends, and so it actually will compress. It'll take multiple pixels together to make one larger pixel, and it'll actually compress that into a 12 megapixel photograph. So you have a 50 megapixel camera, but you bend that down into a 12 megapixel photograph, whereas the iPhone 15 has an option where you can select that HEIF max. See if you all can see that right here. You hit that, and you can get a higher quality, or more information, should I say, in a full 48 megapixel photograph right in the camera itself. So it does give you that. However, the Pixel has a lot of artificial intelligence built into it, and so there are lots of fun, dare I say, gimmicky, in some instances, things that you can do with a Pixel. You have a lot more flexibility in the post picture processing versus the iPhone 15. So they're very kind of different options there, but fundamentally the cameras are pretty similar. Both cameras take good pictures. The Pixel does tend to sharpen and tends to be maybe a little on the cooler side, whereas the iPhone tends to be a little softer, maybe a little warmer. And so that's just kind of a personal preference. I would say that both cameras are are roughly similar. I do like having the ability to do the HEIF max photographs on the iPhone 15, but that said, the Pixel does give you lots of different options built right into the device using the artificial intelligence. And so this is certainly, I would say, a more flexible camera. But if I just needed to take a picture really quickly, just point and shoot, and I don't want to do a whole lot of pomp and circumstance or a whole lot of fuss, I would give the edge over to the iPhone 15 camera. When it comes to the front-facing cameras, both are pretty similar. The Pixel has a 10.5 megapixel front-facing camera. It is a little wider, so you can get more in a selfie photograph, whereas the iPhone 15 has a 12 megapixel front-facing camera. But the quality I find is pretty similar, and then both have a 12 megapixel ultra wide angle, and the quality is roughly similar, the same on both. When it comes to video, hands down the video is better on the iPhone, and that has been a trend for many years. So I would, from just a comprehensive photography toolkit, I would give the edge to the Pixel. Just a point and shoot, I want a nice picture pretty much every time, I'd give it to the iPhone. And then as far as video goes, I think the iPhone definitely has the advantage in the video. So that's the camera. Pros and cons to both. Talking about the battery and battery life, very different between both of these phones. The iPhone, of course, has had some history of being very efficient, very well optimized, and Apple's in-house processors have in some cases been pretty good. That's arguable in some of the more contemporary iPhones, particularly last year. I found the battery life really suffered last year. But just from a pure capacity standpoint, the iPhone has a 3349 milliamp hour battery versus the slightly larger Pixel that has a 4575 milliamp hours. So it's a larger battery, and because it is a larger phone and has that adaptive or some adaptive capabilities in the screen, I actually find the battery life so far has been a little better in the Pixel, and that seems to bear out in some of the head-to-head testing that is done with the iPhone 15 versus a Pixel. It does seem that the Pixel tends to, right, on a continuous, if you just use it continuously, tends to last longer. Both phones can get me through all day. So as far as like all day battery life, not a problem on either phone, but currently I think the Pixel, just due to the larger battery, is going to be a longer lasting phone if battery life is incredibly important to you. Talking about the operating system is going to be purely subjective. Apple is using the contemporary version of the iOS, and of course we're using a contemporary version of Android on the Pixel. This is a more stock, a more stripped down basic version of Android that I really like, coming from the iPhone or the Apple ecosystem. It is very, dare I say, basic, but definitely one of the most approachable versions of Android is going to be on the Pixel, and just easier to use while still offering a lot of the or some of the major a lot of the flexibility that people like, and a customization that people like with Android. But you're not going to get the kind of customization that you find on other Android phones that have additional options that you might not find on the Pixel. But you're going to get more customization, and much easier customization than the Apple app. Apple has opened the walled garden up a little bit, but still I find that using the shortcuts is very clunky and difficult and time consuming. It's not very fun, whereas it's a lot more fun, a lot easier to customize on the Pixel, and then you have a lot of aftermarket launchers, although they don't seem to be working as well on the newest version of Android. I suspect that'll change as updates are made and they are optimized. So operating system really comes down to your personal preference, but both operating systems are pretty mature, and both do a pretty good job of getting things done. All right, let's talk a little bit about some odds and ends in these phones. And the odds and ends are primarily going to surround the Pixel 8, and that is that the Pixel 8 has a substantially faster transfer speed. So even though both phones are using USB-C charging ports now, the data transfer speed is substantially higher on the Pixel versus the iPhone. The iPhone is still using the old USB 2, I think it is is it USB 1 or 2.0? Anyway, the older USB standard, where you have slower like 400 or 500 megabyte per second transfer speeds, where you're using like 2.0 or 2.1 transfer speeds in the Pixel. So data transfer is going to be a lot faster using the Pixel 8. That may be something that is going to be very important for you. In addition to that, the Pixel 8 is going to charge faster. It has both faster wireless and wired charging. The iPhone is comparatively slower to charge, so if faster charging is important to you, the Pixel's definitely going to be the phone you want to consider. And the Pixel offers reverse charging, so you can charge headphones, earphones, Pixel Buds, things like that right? So there are some other odds and ends that you're going to find in the Pixel that you're not necessarily going to find with the iPhone. Let's talk about the processor next. It's point 7. Processor is very interesting. So we're using the Tensor G3 in the Pixel 8, and we're using the A16. So this is actually the last year's this is the chip that was in the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max from last year is now running the iPhone 15 this year. It's plenty fast, and it does a good job. Although, interestingly enough, when we do synthetic benchmarks on these, it should come as no surprise that the iPhone just completely destroys the Pixel. It's faster, it's better. Synthetic benchmarking is off the charts when comparing these phones. But does that necessarily translate to day-to-day use? And I would say no. Day-to-day use, both phones feel pretty snappy, pretty poppy. They work fine. I don't have any slowdowns for the most part, other than just here and there that you get with both devices, to be quite frank. So for just day-to-day use, normal use, videos, shooting videos, I don't really play a whole lot of games. So I suppose if I played a lot of games or I use a lot of intensive applications, the A16 might actually play a substantially better role or more prominent role in the decision to get these phones because of the synthetic benchmarks are so much better. But just on a day-to-day use, I don't really notice any difference. And in fact, I would say that the Pixel actually feels a little more snappy, a little more responsive, and that may simply be due to the faster refresh rate on the screen. So that is my opinion when it comes to the processors. And then let's just talk about some comments that I made about the Pixel 7 last year and what has occurred this year. And the big complaint, if you will, that I had last year was biometrics. I did not enjoy the fingerprint sensor on the Pixel 7 from last year. It was very clunky. It worked in maybe about 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 attempts. I understand that that had something to do with the fact that I do use a screen protector. But be that as it may, there are lots of devices out on the market that work just fine, that have display under the display fingerprint sensors, or in the display fingerprint sensors that work just fine with screen protectors. I am happy to announce that this year I find that the fingerprint sensor works almost flawlessly. So it is an incredibly good, robust upgrade from last year. It works just fine. I have a screen protector on this. I don't have any issues whatsoever. So one of my major gripes from last year has been addressed. In addition to that, the Face Unlock has had some upgrades, so it now is like level 3 biometric certified or whatever, so you can actually use it for financial applications, buying stuff, paying bills, if you're using Venmo, things like that. The big issue I have with it, and I do have the camera, so I do have Face Unlock, and it is incredibly quick, but the big issue is it does not work well in low light, at least for me, whereas the iPhone's Face Unlock works a lot better in low light. It's almost flawless. But the thing about the iPhone is it doesn't just open right up into the phone. So you got to look at it, and then you got to swipe up to get to your home screen. Whereas with the Pixel, I just look at it, and boom, it goes right into the home screen. So I actually find that the implementation on the Pixel is a little better, a little faster, a little easier, but the reliability of Face Unlock is better on the iPhone 15. All right, so those are my initial comments on the Pixel 8 versus the iPhone 15. My opinion as far as if you're in the market for buying one of these, which one is better, I would say that if you are integrated into the Apple ecosystem, then clearly you're going to go with the iPhone 15 because it's just going to work with all the other things you have going on. However, if robust integration of all of your devices within a single ecosystem is not a huge concern, this is what I would say. I would say personally, I think that the Pixel 8 is a better overall phone. It is a better value. It costs substantially less, over $100 cheaper, and you can get even better deals. Oftentimes, there are lots of deals and lots of price reductions that you get with Google devices that you don't find on Apple. So you can get some great deals. You can get this it's a lot cheaper. And I think the quality and what you get given what you pay for is a lot higher on the Pixel 8, right? Even though the iPhone does do some things better, like video. The video I think is better. The ecosystem is really robust and everything works well together. The application support tends to be a little better, right? Even for social media, if you do a lot of social media, like using Instagram and things like that, it just the app developers just really focus on building apps that work well with iPhones, and so you just have this really nice, seamlessly integrated, full-on ecosystem. But again, if that's not super important for you, you are still getting a very mature operating system with apps that work, maybe not as well, but you have a lot of quality for what you pay for, right? So I think that you get a lot more for what you pay for with the Pixel. And so if you can live without all of the walled garden, all the Apple ecosystem stuff, again, I would say the Pixel 8 is probably going to be a better phone overall. The cameras are really good. The video, while not as good as the iPhone, is still good. It still takes good video. You get a lot of artificial intelligence stuff as far as if you travel or you live in an area of the world or the country, and in a country where this is supported, of course, where you are having to communicate using different languages, the translation capabilities and the dictation capabilities of the Pixel is just completely unmatched when compared to the iPhone, right? And so I live down in southern New Mexico where, right, if you're not able to communicate in Spanish, you may find yourself at a severe disadvantage depending on where you're at. And many of us actually do speak varying degrees of Spanish as a second language if English is our first language, but I would say that this definitely is much better than the iPhone. And as far as dictation, just speaking, if you want to make an email or text message and you want to dictate it, a lot better. The AI is just leaps and bounds beyond what Apple has to currently offer. I would also say that you get better battery life. I would argue you get a better screen. It gets brighter. It has higher refresh rate. You have an always-on display. You don't get any of that with the iPhone. So you're paying more for the iPhone, and really what you're paying for, you're paying a premium to be a part of an ecosystem and to be a part of a name, right? Name brand. But again, just to kind of conclude, I would argue that if all of that isn't a showstopper for you, that the Pixel 8 is the better phone, and you're going to save some money, and it has better value than the iPhone 15. So those are my opinions, and I don't know if they're worth anything, but I hope you all enjoyed this video nonetheless. All right, everyone, take care. Be safe.